The three greatest fears in life, I've seen this survey that says like public speaking is number one. Number two greatest fear is asking strangers for money. And the third greatest fear in life comes after standing on stage and asking strangers for money. You know, what I always tell clients is it's your event, right? You got to be comfortable with whatever we're going to do that night. I actually credit like my love of music and my being a bad, but being a musician with, you know, like kind of giving me the tools and the chops to be a good auctioneer also, right? You know, so when people ask me for my backstory, it's like, you know, my granddad was a Methodist minister. So I grew up, you know, watching him perform, right, on stage and ask for money, right? And then, you know, from like 15 on, I was in a post-punk band with like, you know, the same guys that are my best friends today.
That's awesome.
You know, this was in 1985, 86, you know, started in a, you know, buddy's basement and, you know, police kicking in the door to, you know, because the neighbors were complaining on us, all that good stuff, you know? But then I grew up, I went to college, you know, I started working for and running political campaigns. And then that quickly transitioned into nonprofits. And, you know, so it's like taking all of these things, playing in bands, cool, you know, with being on stage, you know, watching my grandfather on stage kind of in that performative way that ministers are. And then the knowledge of, you know, the nonprofit space for like 20 years, right? And so being a musician is, you know, I say this all the time to people. There are the three greatest fears in life. I've seen this survey that says like public speaking is number one, the greatest fear. Number two greatest fear is asking strangers for money. Well, as an auctioneer, I'm doing all of that 80 times a year, right? And the third greatest fear in life comes after standing on stage and asking strangers for money. It's death. Right. So, basically what that says is people would rather die than get on stage and ask strangers for money. Right. You know, death is unavoidable. But standing on stage and asking strangers for money, I guess, is avoidable. And most people would do anything to avoid it. And I'm cool with it. Right. I've been sitting across from donors for 20 years, asking them to invest in different missions as an employee of different nonprofits, right? And so, you know, back in, just to continue on with my origin story, you know, back in 2009, at the depths of the Great Recession, we built a gala for the American Cancer Society. It was called the Black and White Ball. It was the suburban Chicago counterpart to a really big gala that now serves as kind of a model for the American Cancer Society around the country in Chicago, called the Discovery Ball. And there, you know, we thought, okay, there are mid-level donors in the world, so there must be mid-level corporations that can't afford to go to this big gala in the city where, you know, 50,000, 25,000 kind of sponsorships. But, you know, if we created this segment where there were $10,000 and $5,000 sponsorships and $5,000 tables and that type of thing, we'd be successful. And we built that event very quickly in 3 years into a $500,000 annual event. But in doing that, I hired a few different auctioneers, right? Some of them were phenomenal. Greg Dellinger here in Chicago, the G-Man, you know, former Radio Disney DJ, you know, is just, I still say he's the best in the business. Wow. You know, I have people that say, hey, you're as good as Greg. And I always say, no, there's nobody as good as Greg. Awesome. Right.
Yeah. Thank you. But
and so Greg became a mentor. Right. You know, I saw Greg, and then the next year, I think we didn't get to him quick enough and he was booked. And so we went with another auctioneer, and they were good, but they weren't Greg. And so, you know, I had this opportunity to kind of see, and then just as a guest at a bunch of events, also, I had an opportunity to see really good auctioneers and average auctioneers. And I thought, wow, that looks like a ton of fun. And I think that I could probably do that. just as, at least in the middle there somewhere, and it'd be pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I reached out to Greg in like 2012, and I said, let's grab lunch. And he said, sure. And I said, I think I want to do what you do. And he said, oh my God, Chris, you absolutely should. You've got the right personality for it.
Yeah.
And there are more events than there are auctioneers, right?
I remember you telling me that. That was
Couldn't
good.
be
Yeah.
more true. Couldn't be more true, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that I'm doing 75, almost 80 events this year, there are definitely more events than there are auctioneers, right?
Yeah.
And so, so Greg encouraged me, and I ignored him for a few years, even though it was something that looked like a ton of fun. It just, life gets in the way, So then finally in like 2015 or 16, he pulled me into an event, might have been for my employer at that time then, called Northwestern Medicine, a health system here in Chicago, great organization. And he said, "You're gonna be my wingman on this one, right?"
Yeah.
And so I did, and it was just like this is what I was meant to do, right? So then I convinced the DuPage Foundation to hire me, and that was my first event. It's still on my LinkedIn page. You can go watch my very first solo performance ever, and it was as though it took 47 years, Trevor, to find the thing that I was born to do. And so I've been doing it now for, 10 years, but 8 years as a licensed, auctioneer.
Doing it full time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your gig.
So I continued to work at Northwestern until late last year, and something had to give. I did 69 events last year. God, I tried to get to 70 last year. I just couldn't get that 70th event.
I get you.
And something had to give, and it wasn't going to be the thing that I'm passionate about, right? I love to do this. It has never once felt like work, right?
Yeah.
I'm in my happy spot. And the cool thing is like, because it's what I'm really good at, and because I understand nonprofits, and fundraising, I can consult with the client in advance in ways that other auctioneers, many other auctioneers can't. There are a lot of great auctioneers that are also really good fundraising consultants. But, there's this event I do out in Tucson. That's where you and I met.
In AZ.
I don't know, 6-8 months ago. For that event, they were trying to build, it's called Integrative Touch. I'm always really open about my clients, who they are, because if somebody wants to go and try to steal them from me, good luck, right? When I set record after record after record for them, they're going to keep coming back to me. And so I like to talk openly about them to one, shine a light on them, right? But two, because I know that as long as I'm available, they're going to hire me back, right? And that's not being, egotistical or anything. That's just knowing what you're good at. Right.
If you're obviously they're going to be with you forever. If you're good, if you deliver, no one owns, their clients. It just is what it is. And I don't understand. Like, we can get into this deeper in the conversation, but I don't understand in the space why everyone just holds on to information so tightly, and it's got to be my way. And I have a whole slew of questions for you about the approach and the infancy of this space, and there needs to be some disruption, right? But back to the organization.
So on this client, this Integrative Touch, great organization in Tucson, and they're trying to build a planned giving program, right? And so I said, well, how many do you have right now? And they said, well, we might have 6 or 7, maybe 10 or 12, right? And I said, how many of those folks are coming to your gala in February? And they said, we think, they went back and looked at the list, and they said, we think we have 7 people. We know we have 7 people. I said, give those 7 people a golden paddle, right? So that when the first one goes up in the air, I say, ooh, hey, there's paddle number 314, and it's gold. That signifies that this is a planned giving donor to Integrative Touch. In fact, let's just call a quick timeout here during our paddle race. Would all the people holding a gold paddle please stand up? And can we give them a round of applause, right? And so what that did was it was great stewardship for those planned giving donors, right? Because we all know that if it's a simple bequest, that gift can leave just as easily as it came, right?
So
And if you don't do the right stewardship of those donors, that gift could walk away, right? At any point between when they give it to you, when they tell you you're in their estate, and when they die, at any point they can take you out. And so constantly be thinking of unique ways that you can shine a light on them and say thank you to them. But more important, Trevor, more important, what it did was it told the other 325 people in the audience that there's a planned giving program here at Integrative Touch. And if you believe in this organization so much that you're willing to come out here on a Saturday night in Oro Valley, Arizona, and give your hard-earned money in life, why not leave a legacy? Why not think about putting this organization in your estate plan as well? Right. And so what I'm hoping to see is that number of 7 people go to 20 or 25 next year. Good. And at some point, there's going to be so many gold paddles in the room that it's not going to be special that we're calling them out anymore. And then we're going to have to figure out some new way to do it.
So creative. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you is you have some ideas that you put in action that amazing origin story. We can go into so much detail about you figured out what you wanted to do at 47. That's a beautiful thing, man. You know what I mean? Or like you fell into this.
Never
oh my God, old. This work is so good that I get up in the morning and clap my hands. And we're the same. And I know you're a student of fundraising, and we certainly are as well. But just the creativity, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're entrepreneurial, probably, right? If you don't mind me saying, right? Not afraid to take risks. You're comfortable on stage. But you've been on you've sat on both sides. You've sat on so many sides with your background with fundraising that it almost seems obvious to you because you put so much thought in it. It's like, why wouldn't we do this?
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, and the creative part is just something I'm very passionate about it. And I appreciate you sharing just because it's good.
Yeah.
It's just really
I throw out ideas to clients all the time. And some of them take all of the ideas, right? And some of them are like, you know what, that's not for us right now, but let's revisit that next year, right?
Yeah.
And that's cool. What I always tell clients is it's your event, right? You got to be comfortable with whatever we're going to do that night. So so another thing that I do, a couple things that I do, one is this, like if I know there's a $25,000 donor in the room or a $10,000 donor, that's our top level donor. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try what I call the superhero level, right? So I say, I'm going to start at $5,000. But before you all raise your paddles, what I want to know is there a superhero or a champion in this room that can do something greater than that $10,000, whatever that number is. Yeah. And I've had, in doing it that way, so if they raise their paddle, I literally leap off the stage and I run out to them with a handheld microphone and I say, tell me your name, Trevor Nelson, tell me how much you're going to give, X. And that number is a surprise to me as much as it is everybody else in the crowd. But when
you let them choose, let me stop you, Chris. You let them choose the figure?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
so
wow.
When it happens, it is flipping magic.
Gold.
I've had a $1.5 million gift. I've had a $500,000 gift, a $200,000 gift, and more $50,000 gifts than I could ever imagine. Right. And so what that does, that $1.5 million gift changed the trajectory of that organization forever.
Of course.
Arogya World doing great work in India to elevate diabetes awareness and cut the incidence of diabetes in India, right? Raising money here, Chicago, the Bay Area, Atlanta, just great organization. And that $1.5 million gift changed the history of that organization. Right. And the $500,000 gift was for a great, longtime client, pre-COVID client, called the Great Lakes Adaptive Sports Association. And it was there are very few times, Trevor, where I give up my microphone live.
Yeah, I get you.
Never know what could happen. But this guy he looked like money, right? He looked like Gordon Gekko, right? Walked off of Wall Street and walked into this event. And he happened to be sitting at the same table as the board president, right? And so I trusted the moment when he reached out his hand for my microphone, and he took the microphone and he said, he said something like, my wife doesn't know that I'm going to do this, but I know she's going to be good with it. And then he proceeded to talk about how this organization, Great Lakes Adaptive Sports Association, changed his son's life after his son was in an accident. Right. In his mid 40s, if I remember right. And so, and his son happened to be the board president. I didn't know this. Right. And he said, my wife doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I think she's going to be cool with it. I know she'll be cool with it. We're going to give $500,000. Right. And I think in the moment he said it's going to be either a planned gift or a blended gift. But come to find out in the subsequent, 2.5 years since that happened, he's paying it in cash, right? And so once again, and that's so true about planned giving donors also, is like, if you can convince somebody to put you in their estate plan, they are almost always going to give you more money in life. Right.
No
because
question. Exactly.
They're
The lifetime value of it.
in you. They feel ownership in you once they once they say, I'm going to give you my money after I die. They're invested in you in a way that other donors aren't. And they're more likely to give you larger gifts. Right.
It's so emotional. It's so emotional. So much part of their life. I want to back up though, Chris, because it's fascinating.
I can talk forever. Sorry.
No, I get. Hey, me too, bro. Me too. I'm doing a better job listening. Just it took like 400 episodes, right? The webinar and the podcast.
I love it. I'll come back on again and I'll let you talk.
Yeah.
I'll interview you.
I'll come on your pod when you drop one.
Yeah.
But no, man, I want to get back. It's fascinating because so much comes to mind. I've never heard anyone do that before on stage, and then you give them the microphone, and they tell you the figure. But let's just get into the mechanics of that. You said, do you say that hey, we've gotten as much as 25,000 in the past? Do you set a floor of historical?
Yeah.
And I think the big underlying, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, the big underlying piece here is that you got it because you asked, but you did it in a very creative way, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah.
So how do you, but the mechanics of it, just tell me what's the floor like? Do you do any, you said, it doesn't sound like you're screening people too much. You noticed that one guy was sitting at the board president's table. Okay. You're not really profiling. It's pretty obvious. You know where these people are at. No. But just talk to the audience about the mechanics of asking for people during that.
Definitely some pre-work with the client, right?
Let's talk about it.
I suggest at least a cadence of 3 meetings in advance, right? There's a strategy meeting as soon as we contract together, because if you can set a strategy 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 12 months in advance, there's so much more that you can do to move the dime, right? To raise more money. Yeah. And a lot of that goes into let's talk about let's put a pin in table host, right? Because that's a huge piece. I've got a blog post on my website about, and that I think is the recipe for why so many events have set a record this year. So there's a lot of pre-work in advance. I want to know how much you've raised in your paddle raise in the past, because I want to beat it. And if I beat it, you're pretty much going to hire me back, right? If I set a record for you, if I beat your previous high, and so. And then I want to know, what was the top level gift that you had in the past, right? Okay. Is there a likelihood? Is there any chance that there's somebody in the audience that can give more, right? So those are the kinds of conversations that we have. But then in the moment, right? So my paddle raise kind of goes like this, friends. We have reached the heart and soul of our evening together. This is where we have an opportunity to come together as a community to do something bigger than any one of us can do on our own. And so we're, and I always like to talk about what the dollar goal is, right? Because I think it's human nature for groups of people to want to shoot to achieve that goal, right? So, and so I'll say our work here tonight is this: we are working to raise $200,000, right? And the way we get there is by 100% participation and people giving in a personally significant way, right? And then I stop and I say, I get that personally significant means something different for each and every one of us in this room. But when I get to that number that matches your capacity with the importance that this organization plays for you, I ask you to raise your paddle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I say, so I'm going to start in the stratosphere. I'm going to start at $20,000. But before I do that, is there anybody that wants to be our superhero or our champion here tonight that can get us going with a gift bigger than $20,000? If you're out there, raise your paddle and I will come out to you and you can tell us what you're going to do.
Let me interrupt you really quick. Is it an exercise in silence sometimes, and it's getting really
Absolutely.
because I could get very
And you,
quiet, right?
and
And
you
you just
have
can't
to be
speak.
cool with that.
Yeah.
You have to be comfortable with that. And you have to be brief with it, right? This is I tell my clients, this is an 8-second play, right?
Yeah.
Because look, if somebody's going to do something bigger than that, whatever that floor is, right? Whatever that top level gift amount is, if somebody's going to do that, they're going to do it in 8 seconds, right? So I look left into the audience, I look to the center, I look to the right, and then I say, thank you for letting me try, right? If it doesn't happen, I say, thank you for letting me try because I know the answer if I don't ask. It is a guaranteed no 100% of the time if I don't ask. So thank you. Now, let me get back on Trevor's or, Kathy's or whoever my partner is, that set the number. Let me get back on Trevor's level here. We're at $20,000. Thank you for letting me try. Thank you for, letting me try to make magic happen for this organization here tonight.
Wow. So good. God, it's so good.
And you know what? It works probably 40% of the time.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put that out in the street. Yeah, if you weren't comfortable with it.
You gotta be cool with 60% no's, right?
That's okay.
And that's okay. That's okay, right?
Also, let's touch on this point, though. What do you think about just the reality that you're planting that seed for future events, too,
Absolutely,
though, right?
Yeah. So I did this event for Urban Initiatives, this incredible organization in Chicago that builds baseball fields mostly, but sports fields for underrepresented communities, right? And the Chicago Cubs, my favorite team since birth, are big supporters of this organization, Urban Initiatives, and so Tom Ricketts, owner of the Cubs, was in the front row, and I've gotten to know Tom from Catholic Charities events, through just other events around town. And so he knew. And so I knew he was committed to 50, but he was the only one committed to 50. And I tried at 100. Right. And no, didn't get anything. Yeah. But then I said, thank you. Thanks for letting me try. Now let's get back on script and I'll try at 50. And up goes Ricketts' paddle. And 3 other people raised their paddles at 50 as well, simply because the organization put the work in advance to get Tom Ricketts to make that commitment. Right. Yeah. And so, sometimes you can get somebody who's really impactful and, a powerful voice that will inspire others to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And that absolutely happened.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I had never heard anyone doing that before. So good.
So something else I do also, and there's a blog post on all of this stuff. Actually, I don't know that that superhero or champion. I don't think I've written a blog post on that yet, but
you should.
I will.
Yeah.
And so there's a blog post on what I call the paddle bump, and I think a lot of other auctioneers do this as well. But I'm going to copyright it, so just put a little C next to that.
Yeah, totally. And we'll make sure that we have the blog in the show notes as well. And
yeah, that's awesome.
All that good stuff. Yeah.
And so paddle bump, there is no rule that says that bid paddle, levels have to end in zeros. Right. Okay. And so I'm always talking to clients about what's that special number for you? Right. Is it your 65th anniversary? Right. Bingo. There it is. Numbers above 50 add up quicker. Right. So when 200 people do that thing where they raise their paddle at $50 bumps, there it is. I've got a box full of paddles next to me here.
Yeah.
When 200 people do a $65 bump, you've just raised $13,000 extra, and not a single person backed off on that, right?
Yeah.
You got to be smart about it, right? So at the higher levels, I actually suggest that number get bumped in a little bit. So instead of asking for 10,065, you're asking for 10,650. right?
Yeah.
If you're having a 65th anniversary, why would you drop from 10,000 then to 5,000? Why wouldn't you have a $6,500 level, right? If you get 3 people to do that, they would have done 5,000 otherwise. That's a $4,500 win for you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just had an organization that had their 30th anniversary. And so instead of doing the $1,000 level, we did a $1,300 level. And we had like 74 people that did that $300 bump. Right. Every one of them would have given at $1,000 otherwise. And I can't do the math, but what's that? 200, that's $22,000 in free money. So my point is there's always money hiding in the room, and that most organizations don't either ask for it or know how to ask for it. And that's why you partner with people like HGA. That's why you partner with professional auctioneers like me, like Greg Dellinger, like Danny Hollis, here in the Chicago market, alone, and then people around the country, that, I mean, you could just list off the, dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, Trisha Brower, Aaron Kinzel, just these great auctioneers around the country.
Y'all are mad scientists. You get a lot of reps. And that's, I mean, that in the most affectionate way and respectful way, of course, because that's why I look at it. Because once again, just being a student and learning so much over the last number of years, and also, things changing, right? Like, let's talk about events. You talked about, there seems to be this growing, thing. I'm not going dark on you or anything like that. It's like, oh, you don't need events. Well, you've been on both sides. You've been on the major gift, plan giving side, philanthropy officer, all these things, worked for big organizations. And now you're raising money for a lot of really, really big organizations in mass. I know where your, proclivity lies as far as the value of events. But, there's a lot of folks going out there saying, oh, you don't need it. And what you just told me about, like, the plan giving gold paddle. Well, my mind immediately went to, well, we could do that with like monthly recurring, as well. It's like, oh my God, and you can do that in person. There's so much opportunity. I just don't think people are being creative enough. Give me some thoughts about that.
Yeah. So there's something about an event that has this unspoken peer pressure, right? And I'll back it up for just a second. I'm the first one to say that events should not exist for the sake of the event.
Of course.
They should exist for you to identify your mid-level donors, your major gift donors, your planned giving donors. They should exist for you to build relationships, right? Events are not transactions, right? Donors are not transactions, right? So use that event to make it a relationship with as many of those, 200, 300, 400, 500,000 people that are attending that event, right? So what you do in the moment is important. You've got to create a fun, memorable experience for them that ties to your mission at multiple points throughout the event, right? Because that's going to bring them back. That's going to get them to go out there and evangelize for your mission. And that's going to bring more people. You have an opportunity. Event planners, event organizers, nonprofit staff have the opportunity to begin the stewardship of a donor immediately, right? And so it's exactly why I have this box sitting next to me, right? Of bid paddles, because I show people all the time these various bid paddles. Like this one is pretty good, right? Big, bold, sans serif number, but there's Ron Levin's name right there, right? That's the gold, because as I'm, again, handheld microphone walking through the room, as I come upon Ron Levin, and he holds his paddle up, I say, Ron, thank you so much for your gift at $2,500. That's paddle number 242 or 212, whatever it was. And so that's instant stewardship, right? And it's this unspoken thing that people then want to, be like Ron, and get their name called out and have that light shined upon them for a moment. But so like, working with your auction management vendor to make sure that they can get the name up on the screen as well, right? Ron Levin, $2,500. And then there's somebody in the audience that's thinking, I go to church with Ron, I compete with Ron on the golf course, in business, I'm a client of Ron's. And if Ron gave $2,500 to this cause, then I need to do that as well, right? Yeah. Boom, paddle goes up, and you've just converted somebody from $1,000 donor to a $2,500 mid-level donor. And again, and whoever that one is, Trevor Nelson, thank you so much for your gift at $2,500. Ron hears that, right? So then he's going to, next time he sees you, he's going to say, thank you so much, Trevor, for that gift. That was incredible, right? Or vice versa. You're going to thank Ron for it, right? And it just creates this community built around that nonprofit that extends beyond the event, right?
Massive.
But it is so critical what organizations do from that moment until the next year's event to steward those donors, to bring them to higher levels, to build a relationship with them, to raise more money, right? That's what it's all about.
Identify those folks and thank them immediately, and all these, things that you talk about and we talk about regularly. It's interesting, not for the naysayers or anything like that, but I just thought, like, from a human level or just like a trust level, don't you want, like, if you're willing to give at the $2,500 level or above, it doesn't matter what level, don't you kind of want to be able to, like, see the people that are doing the work? Don't you kind of, like, want to be able to, like, shake the hand of the executive director if you're thinking about making a huge, like, I think that's part of it, and we have to do that in person, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's like this, you're talking about just human common sense connection for sure, right? But like, I mean, most of the time, we say people are really smart how they make their money. They're really smart how they invest, and they're really smart how they give it away.
Yeah.
I don't think people do that on a whim. And it could take years. Right. It could take 3 events. It could take 5 events. It just seems so obvious.
So we can go down another path also, which is how you talk to your people, how you communicate with your guests in advance of the event, right? If somebody shows up to your event and it is a surprise to them that there's a bid paddle waiting for them, either at registration, which I don't like, or on the table, which I love, if it's a surprise to them, if that's the first moment they're thinking about, oh, what am I going to give? Right. That was a loss. That was a missed opportunity. Right. But if you're communicating in advance of the event, even 10 days, 2 weeks in advance, even the same week of the event, we're coming together to raise money for this cause so that we can advance our mission. We're going to have a paddle raise, a live auction, and our goal for our paddle raise is, I had a client this morning I was talking to as I was driving into the city for another meeting. They don't want to raise $106,000. They have to raise $106,000, right? They literally just were cut. Their federal spending was cut. This is Erie Family Health here in Chicago, great federally qualified health center. They just lost some funding, and they have to raise $106,000 at the event. And so my advice was, then say that. Say it in advance, right?
Put it all out there. No surprises.
Our goal is to raise at least $106,000. We have a match here. We have a match there that's going to help us get there. But, we need the entire room to stretch a little bit, right? Their event last year, set a record, but it was a smaller event, younger audience also. It's important to have, younger generation giving. And every gift matters. They raised in their paddle raise last year, $36,000. This year, we need to do 53, and then we have a $53,000 match, right? So, when this airs, this event will be over. It's Friday night, and we'll already know the answer to it. I'll put it in the comments.
All right, good, awesome. Yeah, how are you talking to folks? And I love that. I'm a big believer in that. It sounds like you are too. It's like, oh no, we don't want to. This is what we have to do, and here's the reason why. And when folks are involved in your organization, we don't really use the word donor very much. They're stakeholders. They're investors.
I got a wayward camera, brother. I'm just going to fix it now.
It's all good, dude. Yeah.
It's driving me crazy.
No, it's all good.
There we go.
But, we're such huge believers. I'm all the way down to the items. No surprises. And
Yeah.
I love that you nudge them to say it. It's like, no. Tell people we don't want to raise 100. We have to tell people that they want to hear it. They want to be involved. They're investors.
Yeah,
Everyone,
usually
they,
it's just a goal for the sake of having a goal. But like, if there's a number that you need to hit to keep the lights on, to keep this program fully funded, to keep the the fellowship position funded, whatever it is, like put some meat around that and tell people what we're shooting for. But by all means, always make it a bigger number than you've ever raised before, right?
Yeah, shoot for the moon.
Yeah, always shoot for the moon. It's okay if you miss. I mean, I had an event that their goal was 200,000. This is Danny Did Foundation, epilepsy organization doing great things to keep the memory of this little boy, Danny, alive. And they had a $200,000 goal. And I, because I'm on a handheld microphone, I was out in the middle of the room. And we were at the $100 level and we were at 194 and change. And I looked up at the thermometer on the screen behind me. And I said, "Oh, folks, I think we're just going to come up short." I said, "But, let me just try. Is there anybody in the room that can give the difference right now?" And it took about 7 seconds of like just kind of encouragement and looking across the room. But then this person right over here on my to my right raised their paddle, and that room, I didn't have to encourage them. That room absolutely exploded. Right. This was like a theater style room, and there happened to be an empty chair right like next to me, kind of about 8 feet away from that donor. And I was on top of that chair and I was, microphone, congratulating them, thanking them, the audience, the automatic standing ovation. And I pointed back to the screen and I said, "You and everybody else in this room just made that happen." And it was like this moment that the hair raises on your arms kind of thing.
I hope they captured that.
Power of a community coming together,
Brother. We're talking about so many cool things, event specific and getting in, like, once again, there's a science. You're a scientist in this, and it's really, really cool to witness and to listen to. I want to get into a couple things. Talk to me, give the audience some opinions about how you feel about timeline. What you've learned over the last couple of years, just for instance, about just keeping it even shorter, being more deliberate, things like that. If you have anything to share about that? I know the audience wants to hear
about. You're talking about
like
night of event timeline, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We could back up and say, what's the timeline look like for the entire planning of the event also, right?
No, totally.
From that perspective, to not answer your question right out of the gate.
I get you. I do that
too. If I think a best practice, and every nonprofit is going to go, yeah, of course it is to have next year's date on the screen at the end of the event.
Smart.
To have next year's date on the backside of your program, if you have one, your program book, if you have one.
So smart.
To put next year's date in there, like these are the 300, 400, 500 people that are buying your product today. Get them to buy your product again next year and get them to come back, get them to evangelize about your event so that you have to change venues because you've outgrown it, kind of thing. But the timeline, it's fun. I was on a call with a client this afternoon, and this topic came up, right? The CEO talks. He likes to tell people what their gift is going to do, what their support does, right? This is Humboldt Park Health. This is a safety net hospital on the west side of Chicago. This is my first year as their auctioneer. This guy, Jose Sanchez, is the CEO, and he bleeds the west side of Chicago. He is a passionate believer in the west side of Chicago. And so he wants to tell people what's going well and what's not and all of that. And, he went a little long, and then a member of Congress showed up to the event, and she wanted to speak. And you're not going to tell a member of Congress no, so she got up there and spoke. And then there was a 3-minute video that we had already produced that was highlighting, elected officials giving kudos to the event, right? So it all added up to be a 90-minute program, and I was at the end of that, right? So
It's a
not
lot.
ideal, right?
Yeah.
So not ideal. So, the learning from that was like, all right, next year, maybe maybe we put the paddle raise before the live auction so that
Okay.
it's before we lose the audience completely.
Okay.
Your 10 or 20% of the audience that's there for the live auction is going to stick around for it. Right. And so, maybe before we do that second award, we have the patient speaker come up and we put the paddle raise right there. And then we come back after the paddle raise, we do the second award, and then we do the live auction, and then we, play a game, and then the band starts, but yeah. So I think that, obviously attention spans are getting shorter. When I was a kid in the 80s, it was like 15-minute attention spans because that's when the first commercial came in an hour-long program.
Yeah.
Right. So there was like this 15-minute attention span. Now, I mean, come on, it's probably 15 seconds, right?
Yeah,
if you don't capture their heart,
45 seconds,
capture their minds, if you don't capture their wallets in that first 15 seconds, forget about it, right?
Yeah.
So a 45-minute program, an
Mhm.
hour at most,
Mhm.
is best. And, I like to say, like, most events, on Fridays and Saturdays in particular, probably I go on, at maybe 8:15, 8:20. And if we end at 9 o'clock, that's great because 9:15 is like the witching hour, right? I mean, you used to see people streaming out of events, especially weeknight events, right? Because they got to go to work the next day, right? And so 9:15 is like people are like, hey, I'm out. It's my bedtime. So, yeah, get done by 9 o'clock, and and then if people want to stick around and party till 11 o'clock, great, stick around and party.
Perfect. Yeah, and keep it under an hour. Sounds like. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, at or under. I think 45 minutes is great. Like it's
perfect.
15 minutes of preamble kind of stuff. Maybe an award or two, and then I hop up, do the live auction, do the paddle raise, whichever order that might come in.
Yeah.
And I'm coming around. There's more and more people. I know Trisha's there. I think that Aaron's there. I think there's some other people that are like paddle raise first every time. Who's our friend in? I'm drawing a blank on our friend in New York. Our friend that I met him. We were together.
Oh, Bobby. Yeah,
Bobby D.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bobby D. Sorry, brother.
No, it's okay.
But I think he is, he's like a paddle race specialist, right? Let him, do as many events as possible. But he's like, do your paddle race first, absolutely every time. Get the money from the masses first, and then talk to the nitty gritty for the details of the people who are there for the live auction.
Absolutely. One of the questions I actually wanted to ask you was that, and there's no one size fits all, and every event has its own uniqueness, of course. Yeah. And you were just talking about when you were, hey, they're going to go a little long, so we're going to probably we're going to put the paddle raise first because we got their attention, yada yada. So every event's unique. One of my questions to you was, just because I kind of geek out on a little bit, is like, what's your opinion about what should come in a perfect scenario? What should come first? But before I say that, though, like, I actually didn't like hearing live auction participants referred to as transactional givers. I don't believe that for a minute. Actually, that it was like
giving some of the biggest gifts in your event. There's two types of donors, right? Just like giving is a spectrum, right? There are people who can give $100, there are people who can give 100,000. There are two types of donors. There are people who will give to you altruistically from the heart, and there are people who want something or the chance of something in exchange, right? And that's where a live auction comes into play. That's where a silent auction comes into play. That's where a paddle drop comes into play. It's where a golden ticket comes into play. So you guys, HGA's got all these incredible packages all around the globe, right? For $2,000, you can, if you're a nonprofit, you can buy a trip to Tuscany, to, Costa Rica, to wherever. And then you put that in a paddle drop at the end of an event with 400 people, and you're going to raise $12,000, $13,000, right? I think I've done over $30,000 with paddle drop packages before.
That's
right.
Awesome.
Golden tickets, a minimum of 100 tickets for $100. That's 10,000 on a package that you spent 2,000 or 3,000 on. But I mean, if you up your game and spend 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 on the package, you can sell 100 at 200. You can sell 200 at 200. Right. You've just raised $40,000 and netted 34. I'd take that every day. I'd take my entire investment, portfolio and invest in that. Right.
I want to back up. I want to talk. And I'm not pushing back. But you said there's two types of donors. But but also the things that you laid out, the people that like, I want to give, maybe I want a chance to win something. I see a lot of people participating all the above.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think, I mean, I was just thinking about myself. I was at an event with my girlfriend. She invited me. It was, I can't even remember what the cause was. It's terrible. And she raised her paddle during the paddle raise, and then the live auction came after that. And there was something that I was like, well, that's going for nothing. I'll raise my paddle for that. I wasn't connected to the mission of that organization the way she was. That night, I was a donor that wanted something in exchange for my gift. But I mean, when I attend a children's hospital event for like Lurie Children's Hospital here in the city, or public radio, whatever the cause is that I care passionately about, then I become one of those altruistic donors, right? So it's absolutely a fluid thing.
Totally. Yeah.
And even within the event, it's a fluid thing also.
Absolutely. Yeah. And having, and like coming full circle, taking advantage of those opportunities the night of, and just making sure that you are an equal opportunity receiver and can take it all, frankly. And I don't mean that in a greedy way. In a perfect world scenario, getting back to the order of operations with the paddle drop, or excuse me, the paddle race and the live auction, do you have, like, I would, if I could just do it this way.
I have a preference.
Is that too rigid? Is it too rigid to ask that?
No, I mean, I have a preference though, and my preference is live auction first. And I have this, and I can hear Aaron out there saying, "Nope, you're wrong, dude." Yeah. I have this belief that look, if you've got 7 live auction items, you're gonna, unless you can double some packages, you're gonna have 7 winners, right? But let's say you can double it, you've got 12 winners, right?
Sure.
And so out of a room of 400 people, 80 people are going to be bidding in your live auction, and 12 won, right? That means you had 68 losers in the live auction. You thank them, your underbidders, right? Thank you for pushing the number up, whatever, making it fun. But 2, they signaled to the entire audience that they have money to give. Right. I've seen it time and time again, where somebody drops out at the 5. I'm picturing an event, literally picturing an event in my head right now, Hawthorne School in Chicago. This guy dropped out at $5,000 of the live auction, and he clearly wanted it, right? He was in a lot on it. And then he came back in the paddle raise and raised his paddle at 5,000. And I was just like, well, I didn't understand in that moment. Like, these are the things that are going through my head as I'm calling numbers, right? Like, why didn't he go deeper on the live auction if he knew he was going to give $5,000 anyway? He was going to get something, whatever it was. Yeah. I think it was Pearl Jam tickets. That's a shout out to my buddy Chris Malazewski, another auctioneer here in Chicago that I helped bring in a couple of years ago. He's doing a great job. But he's a huge Pearl Jam fan. I think he just saw his 80th Pearl Jam show.
Oh, geez. Yeah, he's a true believer. Yeah.
I'm a Depeche Mode fan. I've only seen them 25 times.
Oh, cool. Right? I like Depeche Mode. Yeah.
He was, he was in on those Pearl Jam seats, and there were VIP seats, good show at Wrigley Field, and then he stopped, but then he raised his paddle at 5,000. I see that all the time, and so it fortifies my belief that the more losers you have in the live auction, the more bids the more gifts you have coming in.
Interesting. I didn't think about it that way.
Also, fires me up. The live auction just gets my juices going,
and the room too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you it brings everybody together, this excitement, and then you instantly go to either a video or a speaker that can really pull at the heartstrings to your mission, and then you come back up, and that's when you've reached the heart and soul of the event, right? And it's different, it's a different tone initially. Right. It's sometimes it's a somber tone. Sometimes it's a celebratory tone. Right. Folks, we are here tonight to make a difference for this mission. right? And feel free. I say, like there are some rules. I go through these rules. So rule number one is make sure you have your paddle. Make sure you're not spending somebody else's money. Rule number two is we are not here in the live auction for deals. So dig deep, give generously. Rule number three: if your paddle isn't in the air, your hands should be coming together. You should be cheering. You should be hooting and hollering. Stand on your chair and wave your napkin around if you want. Let's make this a celebration of this mission. And rule number four: if you are here with a significant other tonight and your partner wants something, whatever you call them, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, baby, boo, bae, pookie, whatever they are to you, and they want something, your job, your lone job is to let them have it, right? Now let's go, right? Our first live auction package, boom, 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 3 minutes per package, seven items, 21 minutes, 10 items, 30 minutes, and then onto an emotional 3-minute speech or video, and then paddle raise. That's my preference, right? Is that the right way to do it? Absolutely not. And do some clients want me to do it opposite? Do some clients just have a paddle raise? Yeah, absolutely. And it works.
It's something I'm always fascinated in asking folks in your position, so I had to get it in there. Have you heard me ask this question before on the pod? The answer doesn't have to be yes. I ask a question, and I'm going to ask you. I'm going to pose the same question to you. You're making it seem easy, but fundraising is hard, and we accept the premise that fundraising is hard. Given that doesn't matter the time, doesn't matter the size of the organization. Doesn't matter the event, what have you. And it doesn't have to be just about event fundraising. My question is agreeing that we both accept the premise that fundraising is hard. Fundraising is hard. Don't make it more difficult by doing what?
Yeah, so I have heard that question, and I remember we had already talked about being on the pod, and I remember when I heard that question thinking, I need to think about that in advance so that when Trevor asks me that question, I have the best answer. Yeah. And you know what I failed to do is think about that question in advance. So let me give you the off the top to ask the question.
It's better that way, man. It's better that way.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Ask me the question again. I want to make sure I get it.
So we accept the premise that fundraising is hard. Fundraising is hard. Don't make it more difficult by doing what?
Yeah. So, the easy answer there is forgetting to thank and engage your donors long term, right? Because if you don't, your event's just a transaction, So thank your donors, right? That's the easiest answer, right? The second answer I would give to that is by boring them. Right. So I know Trisha Brower is going to have a piece on LinkedIn or something at some point here in the next few days about your event isn't broken. It's just boring. Right.
Totally.
I can't remember. I think that's in person, actually. I think that's an in-person thing she's doing. Yeah. I wish I could get out to Kansas City because I'd love to see that.
Her gig in July. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Your event's not broken. It's just boring. Don't bore them, right?
Yeah.
Tie to your mission.
Make
Lean
it fun.
into your mission, right? Find a number, right? Find a number that's meaningful. Embed that number through all of your speeches, through your videos, so that when I get up and say, you heard that number 64, that's the number of programs we've done in at-risk schools this year. That's what we're giving to here tonight, right? And so because of that number 64, I want to come up here next year and say that number's 88 because we got into that many more schools. But this year it's 64. And so every paddle number is going to have 64 hidden in it, right? So then the screens that pop up that say 10,000, the number 64 is in a different color. So it pops out. So it's 10,640 and the 64 is on theme branded to the event, color. So it pops out. But before me, the video talked about those 64 programs. The CEO in his welcome speeches or her welcome comments said the number 64, right? So it's you kind of condition your audience. So don't bore them. Be unique. Be creative. Don't do the same event year after year. Fundraising is hard. Give them a reason to want to come back every year, right? Give them a reason to give you a bigger gift 6 months after the event. Give them a reason to stop coming to your event because they feel like, I've done that before, but I'm giving to this event, to this organization until I die, right?
Wow.
At some point, people age out of events, right? I'm thinking of a donor right now that I really desperately wanted to get to the Chicago Philharmonic's event. This is last fall in October. And she's like, Chris, at my age, I don't go to events anymore. I was like, yeah, okay, I can't argue with that.
That's
Thank
fair.
you. Would you make
real.
a gift anyway?
Yeah.
But yeah, fundraising's hard, But if you're creative about it, if you don't bore people, if you steward them, care for them like they're your friends, right?
Yeah.
Care for them like they're humans, that they gave you their hard-earned money to advance your mission.
Yeah.
Just show that you appreciate it.
I love that. Yeah, talk to them like they're your friends. Would you talk to your friends that way if you were asking them? Absolutely. It's such.
I like to work with my friends also, right? You and Zach and I, just met, 6-8 months ago, but like it's, it feels like family now, right?
Fun.
So we'll bring you into as many events as we can.
I appreciate you, brother. Yeah. I appreciate you coming on, being so generous with your time and sharing. I did mention we're going to put the blog on in the show notes, and your LinkedIn profile will be in the show notes. So this is a nudge to the audience to show Chris some love on LinkedIn. I'm stuttering. It's been a long day. Sorry about that. Hey, tell everybody where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, thank you. LinkedIn is just, search up Chris Hensley, auctioneer. I do almost everything through LinkedIn.
I'm so grateful that we were able to connect on LinkedIn.
We're getting visibility. We're building these incredible relationships that are, referencing us, or like all these things that are being built. And it's because it got active on LinkedIn.
I've never had this level of engagement or desire to engage on a platform like I do LinkedIn, but it was really built for our space.